And we are live. What's going on, folks? It is May 27th. It is Wednesday, and we just got through with Memorial Day weekend. I'm feeling great. We played Soundset this weekend in Minneapolis, which was a blast. And it was a festival that I was looking forward to for a really long time. And I felt really good about how it went, even though it was rainy. But I got to see a bunch of people. I got to see Ludacris, which was really exciting for me because Ludacris is the first concert that I ever went to when I was 15 years old, living in San Francisco. So kind of came full circle, and Dilated Peoples and all these acts that I'm really, really into. So it was an awesome weekend. We hung out, we partied, and because I was on first, we were on the main stage, so we had a really good crowd, but we got to sit back and like hang out and enjoy ourselves for the rest of the day. So weekend was great. Back in LA now. I'll go to Alaska in a little bit, and just gonna wait a little bit until a few people come. Anybody who arrives, you can ask your questions on the left, and I'll do my best to answer them. I see that somebody just asked a question, but I'm gonna wait until people show up. I posted the Google Hangout link, and I'm not sure if I should do that or the YouTube page. So quickly, I'm just gonna go onto Twitter and post the YouTube link too. All right, we got a few people here. So guys, if you just got in, like I said, there's a Q&A box. So if you type in a question, I'm happy to answer them as soon as they start rolling. I'll answer your questions. I'm sorry. I was eating a little hummus, little TJ's, little Trader Joe's hummus. So I apologize, I didn't groom myself completely before. But yeah, I don't really have an agenda. I'm just trying to do these things a little bit more consistently, because in the past I've done like one Watsky Wednesday and then bailed. And now that I'm off the road for a little while, I figure it would be cool to try and keep it going more consistently. All right, a question. Kristen says, I saw you back in November in Fort Collins at the Aggie. Tweeted recently about the states you haven't hit yet, and one of them was Wyoming. Any plans on a Wyoming show soon? No, unfortunately, I have this run that I'm announcing probably in a couple days. This weekend, I'm going to be announcing the summer run that I'm doing. It's a small cities run. I think I'm playing about 20 club shows over the summer. And I'm not hitting Wyoming. I'm not hitting Alabama. I'm not hitting Oklahoma or Hawaii. So I'm not knocking off any of the ones off the list. But I'm going to go out of my way to try and get those ones on the next album tour that I do, because I've always wanted to try and complete the state list. And then, you know, next up we'll be doing all the Canadian territories, and it's just all the countries in the world, all the planets in the solar system, all the galaxies in the universe. You know, I just going to expand outwards and just try and take over one bit at a time. But obviously Wyoming's next. I would love to play. You know, what is the major city in Wyoming that you play? So like Laramie or Jackson Hole, or I don't know. I'd love to. I love Wyoming. No plans right now, but I'm going to try and make an effort. I am finally hitting Nashville, which is, I've played Tennessee before, but I've never played a club show in Nashville, so I'm really excited about that. Jalen Gonzalez says, hey man, you helped me so much, and I just want to thank you. Did you ever have someone in your life that helped you out as well? Well, thank you for saying that, and I'm glad that I could help in some way. In terms of artists, definitely. I mean, I'm a fan still, just like anybody else is. Like it's not really lifting me from a deep emotional pit. Ludacris I listened to for entertainment, but when I saw him at Soundset this weekend, I was so starstruck. I was acting like a jackass. Like, I didn't get to meet him because he literally walked out of his Escalade with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, walked out the Escalade, stepped onto the ramp, walked straight onto stage, and just started rapping without any gap in time at all. Rapped, finished a set, walked right back off the ramp into the open door of the Escalade and left. So I didn't have an opportunity to really fanboy on him. But with the people that I love, like the artists that I love, I'm just the same as anybody else. I get really starstruck, and it's not so much with artists that I just tend to know as peers, but with people that I grew up listening to, it's a totally different story. And when I was in high school, I mean, I'd say the biggest influence in that way were the poets from Def Poetry Jam, because music was something that I loved, and rhyming was something that just gave me a lot of pleasure to do. But in terms of like changing my whole outlook on the universe, doing the spoken word poetry that I did growing up in high school was really probably the biggest game changer for me, and life-changing moment that redirected the course of what I wanted to do with everything. Because there used to be this TV show that was also a Broadway show, and before it was on Broadway, it played in San Francisco at the Theater on the Square when I was a freshman. I was 15 years old, and I went to go see it. Just luckily, someone gave me a recommendation to go, and it blew my mind that there was this whole world. And I think so there were two sides of it that blew my mind. One of which was the fact that it was combining all these genres that I loved, right? So you had rap, and you had comedy, you had monologuing, you had to be good at performing and good at writing to be able to succeed in the medium. And those were both the things that I wanted to do. And suddenly I saw this world where they dovetailed together. But the other thing that struck me about it was it was like a variety show where you had a group of different people in an ensemble performing their own original work and they would get their moment to do it, and the next person would, and the next person would. And one of the things that struck me is just how different everybody was. It was an extremely diverse cast in terms of racially, gender, sexual orientation, where people were from in the world, even some languages that were spoken. Also diverse in terms of the type of work that people were doing. So some of it had rhyme in it, some of it was just way more confessional, some of it was extremely funny, some of it was really serious, some of it was funny and serious. And so to know that there was a world that you could, and outside of rap, where I felt like especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I first got into it, there was really a requirement to fit a certain mold to be successful in it. But suddenly I was seeing this art form where you could bring whoever you were to the table, and the only requirement was that you were honest about whatever your life story was. And it was inspiring because I thought, oh wow, I could do that. I could do spoken word, and I wanted to. But I also thought in that moment, why can't this formula be applied to music? Like, why can't you just bring whoever you are, whatever your comedic sensibility is, into music? And not that people weren't doing that already, but they weren't doing it then like they are now. And that's not to say that I'm the one who innovated that. I think, seeing like guys like Macklemore break and stuff, it was just the moment where it was ready to happen. But seeing, and because the internet transformed the way that people receive technology, receive their entertainment at that point, you had the opportunity suddenly to skip all the middlemen and just get yourself and your own work out there to the world. And so, yeah, long-winded answer to your question, Jalen. But yeah, emotionally that helped me too, because it showed that you could use art as a platform to connecting with people and to finding other people who look at the world the same way you do. So the world, to me, that's what I've always loved about art, is that it shrinks the world, in that it makes people aware that there's other people out there on the planet that are going through the same issues they are. Like, even if you are alone in a room, you're not alone emotionally in the world. And that's always been extremely important to me. Adam and Andrew wants to know, what is the most memorable video game I have from my childhood? Kind of bizarrely, I didn't play a lot of video games growing up because my parents didn't let my brother and I get video games until after we graduated in middle school. But after that, my brother went really crazy with video games. He started buying a lot of them, and he had a bunch of different video game systems. And I wasn't really, he didn't really let me play his video games, but I would sit outside the threshold of his door and I would watch him play, and I would watch them like they were movies, and it was almost like it was mostly role-playing games. Like, I'd say the two biggest ones that I remember watching him beat all the way through, and that I really did get invested in all the plot of it, even though I didn't touch the controller. I was just like right outside his room watching him play them all the way through, were probably Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Final Fantasy VII. Those were games that took him a really long time, and that I also thought were really good. And even though I never touched the controller, I remember those. I can tell you some shit about Chocobo racing. You know, Patricia Quinteros wants to know if I've decided the title of my book yet. I had a couple options for it. I thought it would be funny to call it Your Hero, sarcastically. I'm not sure if people would understand the sarcasm in it, like the idea that somebody says, "Oh, my hero, you're my hero." But to title the book Your Hero, force that on people. I thought that was funny. That's funny to me, but that might not fly because it might just end up accidentally making me look like a huge jackass. Another title that I thought of was, the big title in big bold letters would be Cherry Picked, and then below it, the subtitle would be Moments Organized, Punched Up, and Conveniently Misremembered to Glorify Myself and Brainwash You. So that the whole title of the book would be Cherry Picked Moments, Organized, Punched Up, and Conveniently Misremembered to Glorify Myself and Brainwash You. Kind of playing on the idea that anytime you're writing something autobiographically, you're sort of making yourself a fictional character, because even if you're remembering the events exactly as it happened, just by nature of getting to choose what adjectives you use to describe yourself and what events you choose to select for the book and what order you put them in, you're creating your own propaganda machine. You're choosing the way that people are getting to view you as a human being. So I thought it would be funny to be kind of self-aware about that, but my publisher hasn't really been very responsive to that idea, because it sort of undermines the idea that everything that I'm writing about is truthful. But to hit that point again, like with the Brian Williams controversy coming out, it's just, whenever you tell your own story, you make yourself a character in your life. There's no way, even if you are attempting to be truthful, to not fictionalize it a little bit. Just, it goes with the territory. So I thought it'd be funny to play on that. And the first idea that I had was learn from my mistakes, because the book just involves a lot of reflecting on a lot of less than stellar choices, but I'm not sure yet. Those were three of the options I was playing with. Let's see. Good question so far. Kaylee Clement says, you always talk about being a workaholic, but did you ever find yourself with a lack of motivation in high school or even after? What advice would you give about getting through the shitty stuff so you can work on things you love? By the way, I'm putting off math. Well, two things. One, I would say I have talked in the past a lot about being a workaholic, but I actually think I've been able to improve on that area of my life in the past year. I've been in love. I've spent time with my family. I spent time with my friends. I've traveled for fun, not just for work. And I think that I've been seeing that I can still work hard and find a balance in my life. And maybe I'm sacrificing earning a couple of new fans and an opportunity here or there by not grinding myself absolutely to the bone all the time. But that's more the life I want to live. So I have been getting better at holding myself to that, at living a more balanced life. I still care, obviously, about my career and being as good as I can, but I'm also starting to see that that's not the end-all be-all of who I am. Who I am as a person is not defined by how successful I am in my career. I'm more defined by the relationships that I'm able to have with the people that I love. While I'm still going to try to be as successful as I can in my career, both things need to happen, and I made some strides. But in terms of whether I face lack of motivation sometimes, I'd say it's not so much lack of motivation for me. It's just I fucking procrastinate constantly. I procrastinate even when I'm being productive. I always look for excuses to not do the kind of the hard work that I need to do to like write that next chapter or that next song, that next verse. I'm always like, oh, I'll just clean my room first, or I'll just make myself this food, or I'll just watch an entire season of The Wire first. Like I give myself these things, but then what I do at the end of that reward that I give myself, even if it's like 3 hours of bullshit that I just did, I have to do an hour of work, and I hold myself to that. So I'm always doing things. I'm always doing shit that puts off the work that I don't want to be doing. But I'm also holding my feet to the fire to say like, okay, you can't just waste a day. You can waste 3 hours and then do an hour of work and waste another 3 hours. And then what I find happens is once I do the hour of work, I start to actually enjoy what I'm doing. And then I want to work more because it's not something I'm forcing myself to do. It's like I got into rapping and writing and shit because I legitimately love doing it. I love finding turns of phrases and great metaphors and finding when something that I think wasn't working in a piece starts working and clicking all of a sudden. That excites me, and that just makes me want to do it. It's the most fun thing in the world to me, even though it happens to be my job. And so it's just about forcing myself to have certain benchmarks. Once I've like fucked up and watched 6 episodes of Game of Thrones in a row, it's like at a certain point, enough is enough. John Lampa asks, how much do I practice rapping each week? It's really like before a show when I practice, because or when I'm about to write a new verse. For me, it's my practice is writing. Like I should, maybe if my goal was to be the fastest rapper in the world, I'd be doing tongue twisters every day. But it's more so when I write a new verse or when I have a show coming up, I practice to make sure that I'm ready for that tour. Because even if I nailed the verse that was really challenging 2 years ago, if I haven't done it in 2 years, it hasn't gone away, but I need to get back up to that point where I know what to do to nail it and to really say everything clearly and to make sure that I'm really tightly memorized and everything. So I view it like rehearsing for a play or something. I just, when I have a show, like before sound set, for instance, I had 3 days that I spent. The first day was like making sure that I just pretty much remembered all my verses. The second day was making sure that I could nail every single line and every single speed rap part. And the third day was rehearsing with my band. And so if I have a one-off after a long hiatus, I need to do that to make sure that I'm ready for the show. Whereas if I've been on tour for a long time, every day is like a practice session. So I don't need to rehearse for the next show. I just already have it in my mind. If I have an album coming out and I'm working on new material, I have to practice that new material to make sure I can deliver it really well for the recording session. And if I have a new kind of like type of delivery that I'm doing that I haven't worked on before, then I'm gonna have to rehearse that a lot. But I don't like do daily tongue twisters or anything like that. It's just working on the material that I have and making sure that I'm delivering that material exactly the way I want to be delivering it. Alexis McKnight asked me, what inspired me to write about Admira and Bosco's story, which is the Romeo and Juliet from Sarajevo story that I wrote the story of in the song Sarajevo on All You Can Do. I was looking for an example of interfaith love because the song or the album All You Can Do is in a lot of ways a tribute to my parents. And my mom is from a Christian family and my dad is from a Jewish family. And even though neither of them are particularly religious, both of them, especially my dad, came from families where marrying outside of that religion wasn't something that was acceptable or desired. And my grandma gave my mom a lot of shit for not being Jewish. And I wanted to write a song about love transcending cultural and religious barriers, and sort of as a way to tell the story of my parents through another person's story. Obviously, my parents haven't died in each other's arms, and you know it's a completely different story. But the idea about love transcending all barriers. That's why, and I sought it out. I was looking for a song, or I was looking for a true life story about a couple who had been persecuted for being in an interfaith relationship. and that's how I stumbled on it and was really inspired by it. Adam and Andrew says, what's your opinion on big YouTubers becoming authors? Do you think it encourages the younger and even older viewers to read? You know, I don't know the answer to that question. It definitely encourages people to buy books. I'm assuming that they read the books that the YouTubers put out. I think it's a good thing. I mean, if people are reading, it's good. I love reading, and it's not bad that the internet has brought digital video to the forefront of entertainment, but I don't think that reading is ever going to go away. Attention spans are changing now, but I think that it's a good thing if the books are good. And I've read a few of the books that people who have gotten their start on YouTube have put out, but I think the main thing is that the people who have slaved away to become authors and that their craft is honed and they've gone through all the programs, people continue to read the books of people who have dedicated their lives to being authors, because writing as a craft takes work, and just being an amazing person, an amazing digital video creator, and being able to connect with your audience that way doesn't necessarily mean that your craft is honed as a writer. So yeah, I hope it encourages people to read, but I also hope that really good books get out there, and I'm optimistic that that'll happen. People will just seek out really compelling work. Jewel Brown wants to know, do I have a pre-performance playlist or ritual? If so, what's on it, or what do I do before a show? Not really, actually. I think that my biggest ritual is just trying to relax and hang out with my friends. I do stretching, do my little calisthenics, I go side, side. Most of my stretches are stretches that I did on the baseball team when I was in high school, because that's the only time I've ever been like led through a real stretch regimen. So I do my stretches, I'll try and breathe and get in the moment. But I actually think that being relaxed and not stressing yourself out too much about the show can actually loosen you up way more for the show than trying to spend half an hour lying on the ground doing breathing exercises and calming yourself. Because then you might just get more stressed out about the gig and not be loose when you get out there. Zach wants to know, I'm stranded on an island. My only companion is a mermaid. Would you rather have the mermaid be top half or bottom half fish? Very good question. So we're kind of getting into the idea that I'm gonna be on this island forever. This mermaid might be my only romantic companion ever. So would I rather have the vagina? I mean, I'm sorry to be crass with you guys, but we're talking about like forever and having certain biological needs be fulfilled. Am I going to be able to accept the fact that I'm either, if I'm ever to have sex again ever in my life, going to be banging a woman's genitalia with a huge fish head on top of it, or sticking my dick into some kind of fish orifice, but being able to have like sort of a normal interaction with a sort of Ariel from Little Mermaid type situation? And I would say it's a no-brainer for sure. You gotta go with the Ariel situation. Are you like there's not even really a question there. Like a hole is a hole is a hole. Sort of. I mean, you need the person to talk to. You need companionship. You need intelligence. Maybe we don't even kick it off romantically, and I just masturbate for the rest of my life, and that's that. And I just have someone to talk to and hang out with, and hopefully we'd hit it off, and we'd be able to have other parts of our relationship blossom too. But if it didn't, you have to go with person on the top. Are you serious? Who would ever be able to get, to be kissing a fish head and like putting your arms around the top of a fish? That's just, and the brain of a fish, having the interactions of a fish flopping around, that means that that bottom half of the woman is controlled by the brain of a fish. To me, like, kicking around, might kick you in the nuts, and you know, oh, no way. No way, Zach. Hell no. Ben Hernandez says, do I believe that happiness is only real when shared? No, I don't think so. You can have a happy moment alone, like watching the sunset, or I don't know, eating a bag of chips. Yeah, what if you're alone and you're happy? I think that's real, totally real. Brendan Cooper asked if I'm planning on doing any spoken word performances anytime soon. I have a gig in New York called Page Meets Stage that I'm doing with a poet named Bo Sia, who is one of my inspirations and idols, and we're doing a joint poetry reading together. And that's in June. It's in June. It's June sometime in the 20s, June 20 something. I think it's June 23rd, but I'm not sure about that. You can Google Page Meet Stage, and the tickets are online. You should check that out. It's going to be a really, really cool show. And other than that, I think I'm going to do poetry shows before my club dates this summer, like I did on the All You Can Do tour. So for people who buy this VIP upgrade, I'm going to do these intimate poetry gigs for like 50 people at each club date. And yeah, those will be cool. I did those on All You Can Do, and it was great. It was really, it was cool to be able to perform for such a small crowd of people who really wanted to hear the poetry. And I'm going to continue to do that for sure. Vicky Morella says, what were you doing job-wise before your music started taking off? I worked a few odd jobs here and there. I had the luxury of having my poetry career take off really fast, actually, when I was 20 years old. So I was making money doing college gigs pretty early on. I also came out to LA and I did the like cattle call auditioning thing, which was not that fun. And I didn't make any money doing that. But before that, I had some weird ass jobs. I was I worked at a wood shop for a little while, like teaching kids woodworking at a place in the Bay Area. I worked briefly at the San Francisco Giants Stadium doing food services, doing concessions. And not concessions, but being the vendor in the crowd who goes up and down and sells Cracker Jacks and Red Ropes at the Giants Park. And I also briefly was a stage manager at this vaudeville variety show called Tourette's Without Regrets in the Bay Area, where I had all these weird stories from, you know, I was like counting the money after the show and making sure that the show was running smoothly. And I had to like, but it was a vaudeville show that was really like, they did crazy stunts. And there was one particular stunt where like the host was letting people take Russian roulette shots. There was one guy he picked from the crowd who was blindfolded, and on a tray were a circle of vodka shots, but every fourth vodka shot was a shot of the host's own urine. And so the guy had to take blindfolded shots, and sometimes he was drinking piss accidentally. And one time he took a shot of piss and he knocked the whole tray over, and I had to mop the piss up. And then the next month, when Tourette's Without Regrets came back, the host brought that same guy back to allow him to get revenge on him, the host. And the revenge that he allowed him to get was that the host was going to be pushed. Everybody was going to leave the venue, and the host was going to be pushed on one side of the street in a wheelchair, while the guy stood on the opposite side of the street with a bucket of pig hearts and got to throw pig hearts at the host. And I was the one who had to push the guy in the wheelchair while pig hearts were being thrown at him. And pig hearts are fucking massive, and they're hard. They're really hard. They're almost like baseballs, because they're just, you know, I don't know, they're these big heavy things. And a window got broken, and it was actually kind of terrifying. And I'm a vegetarian, so it was pretty unsettling. But that was one weird job that I had. Jana Layden asks, when's the summer tour being officially announced? This weekend, and I think it's going to go on sale for pre-sales on Monday. So really, really soon. Star Horton asked a while ago what my favorite quote of all time is, but I can't think of one, so I haven't been clicking on that yet. I've been trying to think of that in the back of my mind. Favorite quote of all time. I like champagne for my real friends, real pain for my sham friends. I don't know who originally said that. I know it's been like a pop punk song and a bunch of other stuff, like a Fall Out Boy song, but it was a different quote before. It was somebody else's quote before it was in that. I think that's so clever. I don't know. I'm just gonna say that one just because it's the only really clever quote that comes to mind off the top of my head. Mackenzie Johnson says that she's heard that Andre 3000 is one of my favorite inspirations and artists. What made me connect to him as much as I did? By the way, it's his birthday, so that made you think of me. Happy birthday, Andre 3000. I love Andre 3000 as a writer. I don't even just view him as a rapper, but the way he puts thoughts together to me is incredible. And one thing that I aspire to do that he does really, really well is he can have these train of thought raps where you can follow exactly what his thought process was from the first bar to the 16th bar of the verse. But he's also doing these really intricate rhymes and rhythmic schemes the whole time. But even though the rhythm and the rhyme is so incredible and intricate, it doesn't sound like it's forced at all. Like it sounds like the most important thing to him is telling the story and having you understand what he's talking about and following it from point A to point B. But the rhymes almost sound like they were meant to be there. So when I'm rapping, a lot of times, if I'm making a list of words that rhyme with each other, but I'm also conveying a message and I have a concept that I'm trying to convey, not every one of those rhymes, even if it's the perfect rhyme, even if it's like a 6-syllable rhyme and all of them lock into place together, it still has to be concept first. So if they lock into place, but it doesn't fit what I'm trying to say and it doesn't move the story the way it should be moved, I don't include it. And that's something that's changed from when I was younger. I used to be just like, okay, create a list and rhyme everything and figure out a way to make it make sense together. Like write the list of rhymes first and then figure out the connective tissue. But I don't write that way anymore because I don't think that anything should be in your verse if you're rapping unless it fits there and fits the concept. And it should be almost like magic the way that the rhymes fall into place together. You should be able to say, wow, like it sounds like he was just telling that story extemporaneously off the top of his head and it happened to be in like 16 notes with three-syllable multi-rhymes together that fit in together. So that's what I'm always going for, and that's one thing that I think Andre 3000 is a master of. He's also in a million other things. He's a great singer. He's never put out a bad album. I mean, Idlewild was the closest to it, and it's still got a lot of great shit on it. And you know, he's always, every time he's put out work, he's challenged himself to get better and to have a new evolution in his style. It goes for Big Boy too, and both members of Outkast. But to me, Andre 3000 is the creative genius of the group, and Big Boy's amazing, but Andre's my favorite. So those are some of the reasons why. Zach wants to know, what's the one pickup line that I use on the ladies that works 110% of the time besides I'm George motherfucking Watsky? I'll quote my own work. My big dick is such a small part of who I am as a person from the Invisible Ink album. I never actually used that on a woman, but I'm assuming that if I did use that, it would work 100% of the time. Never actually used a pickup line with anyone, so all of my pickup lines work 110% of the time because I never tried them, so they're all flawless. What are my thoughts on Tom forcing the breakup of Blink-182 again? A massive shot to the entire music community. I didn't know that happened. I haven't been following the internal politics of Blink-182, although I dig them. I think Take Off My Pants and Jacket is one of the cleverest album titles of all time. But yeah, I didn't know about that, so I cannot speak to it. But that sucks because being shady. Sorry, I can't have some more insightful thing to say about that. Ooh, Frack with a question. What's up, Alex Fracknoy in the spot? MC Frack. True. What's good with potential collabs for the new album? Producers too. I don't know. I have a bunch of people that I want to collaborate with. I think for the next album, my main thing is going to be what I didn't do with All You Can Do is I didn't take a period of like just raw creativity after I finished touring to just see what came out. I just jumped right into, okay, I'm building the album now. I started working with Anderson .Paak, and it was, okay, we're meeting up on day one and we're going to figure out how to build the album that we want to build. I wanted to do a sort of psychedelic rock influenced album. I wanted to sound organic. I want it to be a step up from my previous albums in terms of melody and harmony and the musicality of it. And that's where we started. But with this album, my goal is to at least spend a couple of months just making shit with no agenda. Just being creative with my friends and seeing what comes out of hanging out and having a good time. Because that's something that I haven't done for a while because I've stayed on the road so much. I mean, there's a few people I've talked to that I really want to work with. And I'm thinking the next album probably will be more programmed drums than All You Can Do, which was really an attempt to like really build it like a rock album. Do pretty much all acoustic drums. I want more of the 808 kick on the next one. I'm gonna try and get a bunch of beats from Carmack and Nikos, the usual people that I work with, Koosh and Max and all those guys. I really want to get Wallpaper, aka Ricky Reed, who I've been talking to a little bit, to do a track or two, and he just did 21 Pilots album. There's a bunch of like to get like Fauntleroy to do something. I don't know. The goal is to work with a bunch of people and see what sticks. In terms of rappers and other people that I want to work with, I really don't have I have a long list of people, but I don't know who's going to show up in the album. It's just going to totally depend on what sounds good as opposed to who's necessarily like the biggest feature. So I don't know, Frack. Maybe I'll just do 12 songs with you, and it'll just be like just a Frack and Watsky album. Maybe I'll just do 2 verses on it, and I'll put it out as a concept album where you actually rap all of my verses. I ghostwrite them, and then you ghostwrite the 2 verses that I do. That heavier question. Morgan Parker said, I talk about suicide in a lot of my songs, and in the past I've mentioned through going a hard time in my life where I thought about death, but also said I've never contemplated suicide. What do you think about people who contemplate? What do I think about them? All I can say is I think that it's really terrible for anyone to get to a point in their life where they would rather not be on this planet, where they see no benefit from living anymore, and that just ending their life sounds more satisfying to them than living another day. That makes me sad, and I've never gotten to that point because as depressed as I've been at certain times, I do love being alive. I get joy out of every day of being here, and it's always felt to me like I want to extend the process of being alive as long as possible, rather than like bring the end of it closer. But I also think that's partly an outcropping of just like what I've gone through in my life. Like I've had so much to be grateful for. I've had trials and I've had tough things happen, but I have had so many good breaks in my life. I was born into such a loving family with enough to eat, and I was surrounded by privilege and people who loved me, people who supported me following my dreams. And so I've always felt supported by the people around me. And I know there's people who don't have that. And many people across this globe, hundreds of thousands and millions of people who just don't have the very basic building blocks of a comfortable life that I do. So I can't speak to other people's experience, but all I can say is that it sucks to think that anybody could get to that point where not being alive is more satisfying than trying to work out what a positive pathway can be from where you're at. I also will say that emotions change all the time. So if you're feeling terrible in this moment, you have only up to go from there. And if you're feeling great, then you're going to hit moments where you feel, I don't buy anybody who says that they're depressed or happy all the time. Even if you skew one direction or the other, human beings just go through a range of emotions. And I want folks who listen to me to know that if they're feeling like they're going through a huge patch of feeling shitty, that doesn't mean that that's going to extend forever. Like my dad, for instance, he'll admit this freely, so I don't think he would be uncomfortable with me talking about it, will admit that he contemplated suicide when he was a really young kid, like 12 years old, and was serious about it, meant it. It wasn't an abstract fantasy to him. And you know, in New York, it's as simple as like stepping off a balcony. You know, like you can do that. And he will say that he is so grateful, even though his childhood was really miserable, that he was able to stick it out to adulthood because things took many years, but they did change for him in a way that was like extremely tangible. So even if it takes years, a life in a person's perspective can turn around completely. And I think it's worth trying to push through. But I also know that every person is different emotionally. Every person is made up of different chemical balances, and all I can speak to is the lens through which I view the world. Olivia Knowles wants to know if there's ever a piece of work that I've created, poem, song, or video, where I really felt like it was a poor display of who I was and me not being myself. That's a tough one. There's stuff I look back on and cringe, and I think like, oh man, I wish I hadn't like pronounced that word that way. Or in terms of me really like misrepresenting myself, saying something like super misogynist or fucked up or anything like that in my work, like nothing springs to mind. I've been trying. If you were to follow my albums back to my first mixtapes, I think that you find that my perspectives stayed pretty consistent, even from the time when I was like 18 or 19 years old. I grew up in the spoken word world where like speaking your mind was always really important, and so you weren't ever encouraged to write shit that was like, you know, striving to be, it was like desperately poppy or something like that. There's stuff where I feel I can look back and see myself not being myself completely, like trying to put on a rapper voice or something that I thought was exaggerated. The further back you go, the more that I saw. The one thing that I really did a lot was I did a really exaggerated spoken word voice. Like there's the beginning of the song Shock Value on the Invisible Ink album. I can't listen to that. It's like, there's a body lying lifeless on the street corner. There's a body lying lifeless on the street corner. And I'm just like, why didn't I say that more conversationally? Because I try really hard to make my poetry conversational now instead of this like heavy, intense spoken word cadence. And yeah, that's where I was at the time. I'm gonna answer a couple more and then I'm gonna bounce. But I hope, thanks guys for hanging out. Julia says, am I performing in SF this summer? No, but I'm performing in Santa Cruz. That's the closest I'll get. Oh, SpongeBob says, whatever happened with the live show, album, video? Honestly, so long ago, can't remember. Yeah, that's coming out on Tuesday, 6 days from now. I haven't done a very good job like promoting it and announcing it, but that's because it's going to be rolled out on a bunch of different platforms. It's live from the Regency. It's yeah, coming out next week, along with the show dates for this summer. Just one more. Man, people with some deep questions. What do I believe happens after we die? Oh man, you really want to know? I don't believe. I'm an agnostic. I'm an agnostic who skews atheist. So what that basically means is I don't know. I don't have any answers. I don't believe that it's possible to have answers. I don't believe humanity is equipped to know anything with certainty. But if I was to make what I thought was like a rational deduction of like what I thought was going to happen, just kind of like on my own personal experience, guessing, if I was to roll the dice, I don't believe that there's likely an afterlife the way it's described in a Bible or scripture, any kind of organized heaven or hell. I wouldn't rule out the idea of energy being carried forward, but the way I feel, the way I live my life is that the life we have is the life we have right now, and I'm living my life as if this is it, and I won't get a chance for the rest of the vastness of infinite time to ever be conscious again. And it's a sad thing for me to think about that way, but that's the way I live my life. But like I said, I am mostly an agnostic with atheist leanings, so I'll leave open any possibility. I'll even open the possibility of Scientology or Mormonism because I do not have any fucking answers. I keep saying one more and then I keep getting interested in them. Ooh, okay, this is my last question I answer. Nick Smith says, I turned 21 in 2 days, so do you have any drink ideas that me or other people should try? Drink ideas. You're turning 21 and you want me to recommend a cocktail to you. My drink, when I'm at a bar, I mean, I generally order a beer, but I'm a whiskey drinker, single malt scotch. So you may not, if you're just turning 21 and you haven't done a lot of drinking before, I would imagine that you're not going to like the taste of scotch at all. You're probably going to hate the taste of alcohol in general, maybe even drinking a little bit. But I've really gotten into scotch, and I like really peaty scotch. So for those of you who don't know, like peaty scotch, the peat bogs in Ireland and Scotland are like where peat is something that they dig out of the ground that it's almost like soil / manure. They can use it to burn it for energy and stuff. But the peat bogs is a kind of smoky flavor, peaty flavor that a lot of Scotch whiskey gets. And some of my favorite scotches, say my favorite scotches are like Talisker and Lafroig. If you're really being adventurous, get a single malt scotch on the rocks and drink it slow, or put a big ice cube in it, or just little drop of water. Don't water it down with a whole bunch of little ice cubes. You want to really get the taste of the whiskey. You want to just sip it, and it's not about pounding it. It's just about sipping a little bit of it at a time and enjoying the flavor of it. And you're gonna taste it burning every little gulp. You may hate it, but hey, give it a shot. All right, thank you for hanging out with me. This has been Watsky Wednesday. It is May 27th, 2015. Nick Smith, happy birthday. Everybody, buy your computers right now. Let's all sing happy birthday to Nick together. So I'm assuming that out there in cyberspace, 147 people are going to join me in singing as I sing to her. And so even though you only hear yourself and me, this is a choir of 147 people singing to Nick. So happy 21st birthday, and a 1 and a 2. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nick Smith. Happy birthday to you. Bye.